Does the Biden administration's Department of Justice enforce the law equally? Or are serious allegations true that a political agenda is now dictating who the FBI investigates and maybe who they ignore?
Okay, let's try to unpack this. We are diving deep into some highly detailed sources today.
Yeah.
It's a comprehensive report compiled by House Judiciary Committee Republicans, and it draws really extensively on sworn disclosures from multiple FBI whistleblowers. So this isn't just abstract political theory, you know.
Right.
It's presented as a detailed, systematic look at these grave allegations that the nation's top federal law enforcement agency, the FBI, has become, well, fundamentally politicized.
And what's striking here, I think, is that the material suggests a pattern, a pretty concerning one, a consistent sort of top-down approach where federal resources have allegedly been, and this is their term, weaponized.
Weaponized, meaning used to target political opponents, which, if true, undermines that core idea of equal justice under the law. So our mission in this deep dive is to really analyze the three main areas where this alleged politicization seems most visible, at least according to these sources.
Okay, what are they?
First, an alleged internal purging of employees with certain views. Second, shifts in enforcement priorities, maybe away from traditional crime. And third, the expansive use of surveillance tools against American citizens.
And you'll hear about agents allegedly being told to downgrade serious child abuse cases to chase politically charged targets instead. You'll hear how a controversial counterterrorism tool was supposedly used to track American parents, just regular parents at school board meetings.
Yeah, and that surge in domestic surveillance queries, it's huge.
A massive jump, right? Over 250% in just 1 year, based on the data cited. So here's where it gets really interesting. Let's start with the agents, the people inside the Bureau itself, because the report suggests this alleged politicization. It starts right there.
Exactly. The whistleblowers describe what they see as an active, quite deliberate effort to purge FBI employees. Specifically, those who hold conservative views, or maybe just those who dissent from the ideological views currently dominating the Bureau. That's the claim.
A purge. That's strong language.
It is. The report contends the FBI is actively trying to, well, clear its ranks of these employees, aiming for a more politically uniform culture inside.
And what are the supposed consequences for agents who maybe hold those views or who, push back against this alleged ideology?
Well, the sources allege that agents who speak out can face pretty serious retaliatory actions, things like having their security clearances suspended.
Wow.
Simply for engaging in what should be protected First Amendment activity. And that creates an immediate chilling effect, right? If you're worried about losing your career, your clearance, just for expressing a political opinion.
Yeah, of course.
The internal environment, it shifts. It moves away from objective law enforcement, the sources argue, towards one where maybe political loyalty matters more than, say, fidelity to the Constitution. It's framed as a loss of institutional memory and, importantly, diversity of thought.
Okay, so we have a very specific case study mentioned in the report that allegedly shows this bias affecting major investigations. Former Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Timothy Thibault. He was at the Washington Field Office, the WFO.
That's right, the WFO. And that's critical because, the WFO handles a lot of these politically sensitive cases.
So what do the sources say about his role specifically?
Well, Thibault reportedly resigned. And the report says he was walked out of the FBI following these serious allegations that he displayed clear partisan bias, particularly on social media. But the real significance is his position.
ASC, Assistant Special Agent in Charge.
Exactly, a high-level manager. He had control over which investigations got the green light, which ones maybe got slowed down. And the whistleblowers claim he actively marginalized agents who were trying to just uniformly apply the existing policies, for example, on approving election crime investigations.
So the allegation is basically that one person's alleged bias on social media directly impacted the internal process for major national cases.
That's the core of the allegation regarding Thibault, yes.
Yeah.
That his influence potentially infected the decision-making process.
Okay, so if this internal environment, as the report claims, fosters political loyalty, maybe above other things, it wouldn't be too surprising if the sources allege that this bias then plays out in, well, how the law is enforced externally, creating a double standard.
Exactly. And that brings us to the second section.
Yeah.
These alleged misdirected resources and uneven justice.
And this sounds pretty serious.
This is one of the most, I'd say, troubling claims in the whole report, really, because it suggests core public safety duties might be getting sidelined. One whistleblower claimed he was explicitly told...
Told by who?
Management. It implies management, yes. He was told that child sexual abuse material investigations were no longer an FBI priority, and should be referred to local law enforcement agencies.
Wait, hang on. Told to downgrade child abuse cases. Why?
The reason given, according to the whistleblower, was so he could work on a Washington-directed, politically charged case instead.
Wow.
So this suggests a really grave, potentially deliberate misprioritization of resources, pulling agents away from protecting kids, essentially, to pursue what the report frames as political objectives. The priority seems to shift based on what's making noise politically in D.C., maybe not the severity of the actual crime.
And this claim shift is further complicated by an alleged double standard in enforcing certain federal laws, specifically the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, the FACE Act.
That's right, the FACE Act. It's meant to ensure people can access abortion clinics, but also places like religious counseling centers or churches without interference.
Okay, so what's the alleged double standard here?
Well, on one side, the Department of Justice allegedly allowed attacks on pro-life facilities and churches to go unabated. The report cites nearly 70 incidents targeting, destruction, vandalism, mostly after the leak of the Dobbs Supreme Court opinion.
70 incidents.
Almost 70, yeah. Documented events. But, the sources allege, virtually no aggressive federal action was taken against those responsible for those incidents.
Okay, so contrast that with the action described in the report concerning Mark Houck, who is identified as a pro-life individual. What did the feds do in his case, according to the sources?
The sources document really aggressive and allegedly unnecessary tactics against Houck. His wife described it vividly. She said, a SWAT team of about 25 came to my house with about 15 vehicles.
15 vehicles for one guy.
That's her account. And she said they had about 5 guns pointed at my husband, myself, and basically at my kids, all during a dawn raid. Now, his lawyer stated Houck had already offered to just appear voluntarily in court.
So the raid maybe wasn't needed.
That's the argument, that this aggressive show of force was avoidable. The report concludes this specific tactic seems intended solely to intimidate people of faith and pro-life Americans, sending a message, basically, that this kind of aggressive enforcement is reserved for certain groups.
All right, shifting gears a bit now. Let's look at another really critical area in the report. How the federal government allegedly used counterterrorism resources, but to target American parents, specifically parents speaking out at, local school board meetings.
Yeah, this part is pretty detailed.
The document cites specific evidence of alleged collusion between the White House, specifically naming Mary Wall, a senior policy advisor to the president, and the National School Boards Association, the NSBA. The claim is they worked together to manufacture a pretext for the federal government to step in.
And the timeline here is presented as highly relevant because it suggests coordination, allegedly. The White House official supposedly emailed the NSBA CEO before that NSBA letter, asking for federal help was even finalized, asking to review it first. The key result, the report argues, was Attorney General Garland issuing his October 4th directive about investigating threats against school officials. And as a direct result of that directive, the FBI's own counterterrorism division operationalized the issue.
Operationalized it? How? What does that mean in practice?
It means they created a specific threat tag into officials to track concerned parents involved in these school board disputes.
A threat tag like they use for terrorism threats.
Exactly. And this is where the allegations get really concerning for civil liberties advocates. Using the counterterrorism division, using a specific threat tag like that, it fundamentally changes how seriously the investigation is treated. It potentially shifts parental dissent, maybe loud or angry dissent, from being a local public order issue
into something under the umbrella of national security threats.
Precisely. That's the implication.
That is significant. So what specific examples did the FBI actually open cases on using this new framework? And importantly, how solid was the evidence, according to the report?
Well, the report details several examples, often kicked off by tips coming into the National Threat Operations Center, sometimes called the snitch line.
Okay.
For instance, an investigation was launched into a mom. She was part of a group called Moms for Liberty. And she allegedly told a school board, "We are coming for you." Now, while that sounds threatening, the report suggests the context was clearly related to, like, upcoming local elections.
Right. Political speech, maybe heated.
Potentially. Then there was another investigation into a dad who opposed mask mandates. Why? Because a complainant alleged he fit the profile of an insurrectionist and has a lot of guns.
Okay. Did he threaten anyone?
Here's the key part, according to the report. The complainant admitted to the FBI agent they had no specific information or observations of any crimes or threats. None.
So why report him then?
They apparently only reported the tip because they'd heard the DOJ had set up this website or hotline for such tips.
So the sources are suggesting the FBI was actively chasing cases based on pretty weak, maybe even non-existent evidence, simply because these directives created a kind of political pressure to find these threats.
That's exactly what the report alleges. And, compounding this, the sources claim the FBI is also allegedly manipulating its overall threat statistics, specifically artificially padding domestic violent extremism, or DVE statistics.
Padding the stats, how?
Whistleblowers indicated that the Washington Field Office, the WFO again, allegedly manipulated how January 6th investigations were categorized. They ran the core cases from D.C., naturally, but then deliberately sent the resulting leads or related case files out to local field offices all across the country.
Okay, so what's the effect of doing that, spreading the cases out like that?
Well, the report argues this manipulative case file practice creates false and misleading crime statistics. By running cases from D.C. but logging related activities or leads nationally, it creates this illusion, they say, that threats from DVE are popping up in jurisdictions all over the nation.
So it makes the DVE threat look much wider, much more pervasive geographically than it might actually be?
Exactly. It allegedly overstates the national threat landscape, potentially to fit a political narrative favored by the administration. That's the allegation.
Okay, finally, let's look at surveillance. The report touches on how the Bureau is allegedly using its foreign intelligence tools against Americans and also leveraging its relationship with, well, big tech, Silicon Valley.
Right. This involves the FBI's use of its Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act authorities, FISA, particularly Section 702. Now, FISA is supposed to target foreign threats located overseas.
But it scoops up American data too, right? Incidentally.
Vast amounts, yes,
Yeah.
incidentally. And the FBI has a documented pattern, according to oversight bodies, of violating the rules for accessing this data. The Inspector General's own report found over 400 instances of non-compliance with the Woods procedures.
Woods procedures. Remind us what those are.
They're the internal FBI rules that require agents to verify the factual accuracy of information they put into sensitive warrant applications, like FISA applications.
Okay.
So finding hundreds of failures and following those basic accuracy procedures just across 29 applications reviewed suggests a pretty systemic failure, doesn't it? A failure to maintain the legal standards needed for these very sensitive warrants, especially when they might involve Americans.
Now let's talk scale. The sheer number of these queries against Americans. The report cites Office of the Director of National Intelligence Data, ODNI data, revealing the FBI conducted an estimated 3.4 million, almost 3.4 million U.S. person queries in 2021.
Yeah, 3,394,053 to be exact, based on the estimate.
Compared to roughly 1.3 million the year before in 2020, that's a massive jump, over 250% in just 1 year. What could possibly drive that kind of surge?
Well, the sources suggest that while, sure, some increase might be due to general cyber threats or other factors, the sheer magnitude of that jump, it's difficult to justify based on public explanations. Remember, querying means searching those foreign intelligence databases using American identifiers, names, emails, phone numbers. So a 250% jump in 1 year raises a really crucial question, doesn't it? Was this huge increase in accessing American data truly necessary for foreign intelligence purposes? Or, as the report suggests, was it potentially used for unauthorized domestic purposes, maybe getting around standard Fourth Amendment warrant requirements?
And we can't ignore the alleged link to big tech and election interference claims either. The sources allege the FBI has a, let's say, problematic relationship with social media companies. Whistleblowers indicate the FBI provided guidance to Facebook, for example, about potential misinformation, and that guidance subsequently triggered content moderation related to the 2020 presidential election.
Yeah, and the sources specifically point to the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story as a key example here. The allegation is essentially that federal law enforcement intervened with private companies, gave them guidance or warnings that then led to the censorship or, downplaying of information that was highly relevant to the election process.
Suggesting the FBI might have used private companies to achieve an outcome, like suppressing a story, that it couldn't legally achieve on its own.
That's the allegation put forward in the report, yes.
Yeah.
Using platforms as a sort of proxy.
So wrapping this all up, what does it mean when you put all these pieces together, this deep dive into these whistleblower disclosures? It really paints a cumulative picture, doesn't it? Alleging a law enforcement system that has become politically driven,
Uh-huh.
pursuing a specific ideological agenda, they claim, by diverting critical resources away from serious crimes, applying stark double standards against certain groups like conservative or religious individuals, and actively targeting basic civil liberties like free speech.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the evidence presented in this report, whether it's the alleged internal purge of dissenting agents, the claimed downgrade of child sexual abuse cases, the use of counterterrorism tags against parents, or that huge surge in surveillance queries, it all seems to point, according to these sources, towards a potential systemic breakdown.
A breakdown where
Federal agencies are allegedly prioritizing advancing a political ideology over their mandate to protect all Americans equally under the law. And this raises a really important question, I think, for you, the listener. If federal law enforcement is allegedly willing, according to these whistleblowers, to inflate threat statistics and divert resources away from serious crimes just to serve a political narrative, well, what happens to the rule of law itself? And maybe more importantly, how does the nation even begin to restore trust in the very institutions meant to uphold it? That seems to be the challenge highlighted here.